This is a story dedicated to my mom. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. The Adventures of Coalpot by Nana Adoma. In many parts of Ghana, people live and work in much the same way as their ancestors. But modern ways are beginning to replace the old ways, as this story tells. Once, not very long ago, in the kitchen of a house which belonged to a woman named Mame Niame, there lived an old clay stove. Round her were pots, saucepans, knives, spoons, and other things you find in a kitchen. They lived in the kitchen as people live in a family, and when there was no man or woman near them, they talked to each other and enjoyed themselves. They talked to Ya, too. Ya was Mame Niame's daughter. She liked all the kitchen folk and was their friend, so they talked to her. But when any other person came into the room, the kitchen folk all went quiet at once. Only Ya knew that they could talk to each other, and she did not tell anyone. Clay Stove was the mistress of the kitchen. Everyone obeyed her because she was the oldest of the kitchen folk and she did all the cooking. One Saturday afternoon, Mame Niame brought home a funny-looking tin thing. "What is that, Mother?" Ya asked. "It's a coal pot," said Mame Niame. "You use it for cooking. It's light and you can carry it out to the yard when you want to. Now I won't have to work at that hot old clay stove every day." Ya did not say anything. The kitchen folk were quiet too. Mame Niame put the coal pot down on the floor, then went out of the room. No one looked at the coal pot. "Poor clay stove," Ya said, touching the old stove softly. "I'm sure Mother did not mean it. She will still use you for cooking. She won't use this coal pot." But Ya was wrong. Her mother did use the coal pot. She took it out of the kitchen into the yard and began to do all her cooking there. For a long time, Coalpot stayed in the yard. He sent messages into Clay Stove, but she never answered them, and Mame Niame did not bring him into the kitchen at all. Then, one Saturday evening after supper, she brought him in, threw him into the corner, and went out again. Everyone in the kitchen was quiet. Clay Stove and the other kitchen folk were seeing Coalpot for the first time in many months. He looked different. His sides were no longer clean and shining, but dirty, old, and bent. He lay on his side in the corner without speaking, till Ya came in and picked him up. Then she introduced him to Clay Stove. "How do you do?" said Coalpot. "I am glad to meet my mistress at last." "Your mistress?" Clay Stove asked. "Who is your mistress?" "You are," Coalpot told her. You are mistress of the kitchen, and I am part of the kitchen. Mame Niame uses me in the yard, but I am really part of the kitchen. Now I am glad to be here so that I can listen to you and obey you." "You see," Ya said to Clay Stove, "he means it. I told you he wants to be friends." After that, Clay Stove could not be angry with Coalpot anymore. "Welcome," she said. "I hope you will be happy among us." "I'm sure I will be," Coalpot answered. "Shh, listen, there is somebody outside," the pot who was nearest the door said. At once the kitchen became very quiet. The door opened and Mame Niame came in. "Oh, there you are," she said to Ya. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Bring that coal pot out into the yard and help me cook some food." She took some knives and a big spoon from a drawer, picked up the saucepan, and went out again. Ya filled Coalpot with coal and took him to her mother. Since it was a Saturday, they were away for a long time, cooking a big supper. At last, Mame Niame brought Coalpot back in. She threw him into a corner and left him there. Then she went out again. Coalpot looked up at Clay Stove sadly. "What's wrong?" asked a spoon who was looking out of the drawer. "Mame Niame was talking to another woman," Coalpot said. "About me?" asked Clay Stove. "Yes." "I thought so," Clay Stove said. "Is it bad news?" "Yes, it is," Coalpot said quietly. Just then, Ya crept into the kitchen. She looked sad, too. She picked up Coalpot, took him over to Clay Stove, and sat down between them. "I won't let you go," she said. "You are my friends." The pots, pans, spoons, knives, and other kitchen things did not understand what was happening. Coalpot explained that Mame Niame wanted to break Clay Stove up and throw her away. "She has decided to throw me away, too," he said. "Why?" asked the knives and spoons. "Because Clay Stove is too hot and burns too much wood, and because I am too dirty," Coalpot answered. "That is what this other woman said. She has an electric stove that is very clean and easy to use. She says it is much better than clay stove and I. Now Mame Niame wants one of these new electric stoves, and she has decided to throw us away. No, said Ya, and she began to cry. Don't cry, little one, Clay Stove told her. I am very old. Perhaps it is time for me to go. And have you liked it here? Coalpot asked. Oh yes, I do like it here very much, Clay Stove answered. And there is dear Ya. I have known her since she was a baby. Often she has come to me when she was feeling sad, and I have made her warm and happy again. Ya softly rubbed one hand down Clay Stove's red side. You have been part of the family then, Coalpot said. I am proud to say that I have, answered Clay Stove. I could tell you everything that has happened to them for years and years, but we would rather hear your story. So Coalpot began his story. All I remember about my early days is that I was big, tin full of kerosene, he said. I used to be clean and shiny, and there were no holes in my sides. I was quite new. This was in a town far away in Europe. There were a lot of us, all full of kerosene. Then some men put us on a ship. The other tins told me where we were going. I was right at the bottom of the ship, so I could not see for myself. They said we were going to different countries across the sea. Coalpot stopped for a breath. There was a noise in the drawer. The knives, forks, and spoons started to move when they heard the words Europe and the sea. Some of them came from England, and they knew a lot about Europe and the sea. What happened to you after that? Clay Stove asked. We stayed on the ship for a long time, Coalpot answered. We came all the way from Europe to Africa. Where did you get off the ship? Saucepan asked. In Port Harcourt in Nigeria, Coalpot answered. What happened to you then? Clay Stove wanted to know. A woman in Port Harcourt bought me, Coalpot said. Soon she used all the kerosene inside me, but that was not the end, because then she cleaned me very carefully and used me for carrying water. She was very good to me and kept me clean and shining. I worked for that woman till she dropped me one day and a stone made a hole in my side. I was no use for carrying water after that, so the woman sold me to a man who made all sorts of things from old tins. He put more holes in my sides and made me into the coalpot which I am today. But how did you get here? Saucepan asked. This isn't Port Harcourt. I came on a lorry, Coalpot told him. There were a lot of other tins there, and as soon as the lorry started to move, we all began to make a noise. At first I tried to sing, but the other tins were all banging and shouting, and soon I began to bang and shout too. We all enjoyed the journey very much, but I don't think the lorry driver was very happy. We really made a lot of noise. At last we came to the market near here. The driver stopped his lorry and put us on the ground. I stayed in the market for a long time at a trader's stall till one day Mame Niame came along and bought me. Then I came here. That's the end of my story. Coalpot stopped talking and smiled at everyone in the kitchen. Are you happy here with us now? Saucepan asked. I wasn't happy alone out in the yard, Coalpot told him. But I am very happy in here with all of you and Clay Stove, the mistress of the kitchen. And now Mame Niame is going to throw you both away, Kitchen Table said. No, said Ya fiercely. I won't let her. Come, Ya, Clay Stove said to her. It's late. You must go to bed now, and we must all go to sleep. We'll think about it again in the morning. I won't let her throw you away, Ya said again. I won't let her. I'll think of something. She went sadly off to bed. Early next morning, Mame Niame came into the kitchen. 2 men followed her, carrying a big, shiny box that looked very heavy. They put the box down on the kitchen floor. Ya came in after them. What's that? She asked, pointing to the big white box. It's an electric stove, Mame Niame told her. Why do you want an electric stove? Ya asked. We have clay stove and coalpot. They cook very well. But an electric stove is quicker and cleaner, Mame Niame said. You will like it when you use it. No, Ya said. Where shall we put the electric stove? One of the men asked Mame Niame. Shall we break up this old clay stove for you and put the electric stove in its place? No, Ya said again. She ran over to Clay Stove. Look, Mother, we can put the electric stove here, between Clay Stove and the wall. Then we can cook on the electric stove and use Clay Stove as another table for pots and saucepans. That's true, Mame Niame said. Yes, that's what we'll do with the clay stove. We don't need to break it up. The men began to move the electric stove into the corner. Then they saw Coalpot sitting there. Shall we throw this old coal pot away for you? They asked. No, Ya said. Look, Mother, we can use Coalpot over there on the other side of clay stove. Then we can use it if the electric stove does not work someday. Coalpot is easy to carry and quick to light. That's true, Mame Nyame said. Yes, that's what we'll do with the Coalpot. We don't need to throw it away. So Ya carefully laid Coalpot on the other side of clay stove, while the men put the electric stove in the corner. After that, the men and Mame Nyame went outside again. Thank you. That was very clever, Coalpot said to Ya. Claystove and I are safe now. Yes, thank you, little one, Claystove said. For years I tried to look after you. Now you are looking after me. But look at that electric stove. She will do all the work now, and she will want to be the mistress of the kitchen. Let her work, Coalpot answered. She is young and we are old. Let her work and be the mistress of the kitchen. We will sit here with Ya and tell each other stories all the time. We have done our work. Slowly, Claystove began to smile. You're right, she said. I don't want to be the mistress anymore. Let the electric stove do that. I'll sit here with you and we can tell each other all the stories we ever heard. Good, Coalpot said. Good, said Ya. She sat down and touched softly Claystove and then Coalpot. All three smiled happily at each other. We're safe now, Ya said. Who will begin the first story?